When you file your taxes, should you take the standard deduction or itemized deductions? Which one is better for you? I've got circumstances to help that. More coming up. My name's Mike Bernard. I'm the host of The Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. It's tax season. And therefore, as you're getting all your documents together, is it better for you to take the standard deduction or itemize? And the reason why I bring that up while you're getting your documents together is a lot of times, and I tell you, many people make this mistake. They say, I haven't itemized in years. I'm not going to pull that information together. I'll just provide the basic minimum stuff and I'll take the standard deduction. Well, I would argue that's a mistake. Despite the tax law changes that changed back in 2017, 90% of people are taking the standard deduction. You still need to find out, right? You still need to find out. So this question of, well, which is better? Which is better? Should you take the standard deduction or the itemized deduction? For our clients, we're going to do probably 3,000 tax returns this year. You've got to do the math. For everyone, you've got to do the math to say, all right, let's fill out a full Schedule A. Sorry, that's geeky speak, but that's where you add up all your itemized deductions. Let's input all the information in there and see what it adds up to and compare that to the standard deduction that you'd get otherwise and take the higher of the two. That's what you should be doing. Now, if you've done the rough math and you say there's just no way I'm going to get there, that's fine. But you need to not assume that each year is going to be like the last, and you need to take a look and truly get the best one for your situation, because it could change from year to year. And the rules are, you can either take the standard deduction, which for last year, 2023, married filing jointly was around $28,000, a little bit less than that, or you can add up your actual out-of-pocket expenses in a few different key categories. Go over that in just a second. And if that's a higher number, then you can get that. So you're going to get the higher of the two. So might as well put in the time. Now, this year, it's gone up again for 2024. It's going to be closer to 30,000 married filing jointly. So here's the thing, you've got to do the math and see which one makes sense. And as you saw there from that table, it depends on your age, it depends on your filing status, it depends on different factors. And so you may have itemized in the past, and now the standard deduction is just way higher, or circumstances have changed, but you've got to take a look at your situation and see what's best. Now, there's a few circumstances when it's going to be likely that it's going to be beneficial for you to itemize. The first wasn't really a thing until it became a thing, and it became a thing really this past year, and that is if you've got a large mortgage or a high interest rate on your mortgage. So when you look at Schedule A, or the expenses that you get to itemize and see, okay, is that higher than the standard deduction? Again, you're trying to get above, for last year, trying to get above 28 grand married filing jointly, and therefore a mortgage interest expense or mortgage interest deduction, that can really add up. And for a long time, people have had very, very low interest on their mortgage, which is fantastic. That's far better than getting this tax deduction. But recently, with the housing market, we've had higher prices, so you've likely have had to get a larger mortgage, and we've had soaring interest rates, mortgage interest rates. You may have a mortgage that a couple of years ago would have been 2.5%, 3%, and now it's 6.5%, or even 7 or 7.5%. And if that's you, then likely you went from I'm obviously going to take the standard deduction to, wait a second, I might be itemized, and it may make sense for you to itemize. So keep an eye out for the tax form from your bank showing you the amount of mortgage interest that you paid, because that might be the ticket to say, oh, you know what, doing the math, it's going to make more sense for you to itemize. When people think about those sorts of costs, they think that there's a cap on mortgage interest deductions, like there's a cap on your state and local property taxes. So when you look at your overall itemized deductions, now the state and local, the taxes paid is where you add up your state and local taxes paid, your property taxes, and any personal property taxes as well. all of that has a cap of 10 grand. That's the maximum amount that the taxes paid can count towards your itemized deductions. So you've got to make sure that you're inputting all of that. But many people hit that cap of 10 grand. Mortgage interest, though, is not capped. So if you've got a larger mortgage or you have a higher interest rate, then the full amount of that interest rate, of the interest that you paid, is allowable as an itemized deduction. So that's one circumstance. A second circumstance where it may make sense, likely will make sense for you to itemize, is if you donate either a lot of money or some time as well to a nonprofit, a 501c3 charity. That's right, this donations to charity, that's another area, another category that you get to list up what you donated or contributed or the exact out-of-pocket number and list it as an itemized deduction. Most people also don't know that volunteer miles actually count as well. I volunteer for a few different things and just recently was on a bus, 2 different buses with 120 middle schoolers for about 5 hours up to a camp. Well, there were some other folks that weren't able to make the bus. We call them lucky, and they had to drive themselves. Well, those miles on their own vehicle, they can actually count towards volunteer miles, right? And so again, the deduction that you get on your taxes is always a percentage of the cost. So far better to just not have the expense anyway. But if you're giving of your time, and that includes traveling, then make sure you're counting that as well. I would also slip in here, even if you're if you donate enough to make it make sense for you to itemize your deductions, you might also want to work with your certified financial planner and bunch or stack some of your giving so that you really itemize, right? And so you could stack a couple of years worth of donations all into 1 year, assuming that it makes sense from your present financial position, your entire 6 areas of your financial life. But you could donate to a donor-advised fund, and in the year you make that outsized donation, that all counts towards your itemized deduction, and that can allow you to kind of accelerate through and really itemize, get a big deduction in 1 year, and then shift over to the standard deduction in subsequent years. But if you're donating a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of goods, that's another reason where you might say, yeah, it's probably going to make sense for you to itemize. Make sure you do that math. And then the final reason or circumstance where you'll likely itemize, but this one is extremely rare, did a video on this just recently, is if you have low income but really high out-of-pocket medical expenses. Low income and really high out-of-pocket medical expenses. So here's the circumstance, and I've got one for you. Doesn't make sense for a lot of people. Most times you think, well, yes, in order to itemize my deductions, I add up my out-of-pocket medical expenses, all my state and local and property taxes, but it's capped at 10 grand, my mortgage interest and any, those sorts of things, and then donations. I add all those up. If those are greater than the standard deduction, that's what I'm getting. But that's not entirely true, because that out-of-pocket medical expense, that is, you only get to deduct what's above 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. So the higher your income is, the higher the threshold, the hurdle that you need to get over before your medical expenses even land on your itemized deduction, your Schedule A. And therefore, you've got to have both a combination of low income and high medical expenses. Many people, if you've got high medical expenses, you got to come up with a way to pay for those. So your income's going to be high, either because you're working a lot or you're drawing money out of retirement accounts. Neither are great situations, right? So circumstances where this could actually occur. Got a couple that recently retired, couple years ago. They still have a little bit of side kind of business income coming in, but they sold the business and they've been living off of that cash and a little bit of investment. So they've got income coming in, but it's not a ton because they're living off of a lot of cash. As you withdraw cash that you've already paid tax on, that basis or your principal amount isn't taxable as you spend it. However, she just found out she had breast cancer, and she's also not on Medicare, and therefore it's going to be a lot of out-of-pocket medical expense. And there's some other treatments and other things that she's doing that her health coverage just doesn't cover. And so it's got to be eligible, but it's that sort of situation where Your adjusted gross income is probably going to be low, but you've got a lot of medical expenses because you've got a very complicated health situation going on, and you're drawing from resources that as you spend them, it's not taxable to you. So should you itemize or should you get the standard deduction? About 90% of us, it's going to make sense to do the standard deduction, but about 100% of us should still do the math. You still want to find out, all right, well, if I were to itemize, how close am I? How close am I? That can also reveal some strategies, like I said, stacking your donations or something like that. So work with your certified financial planner, see which one makes sense for you. Don't just assume, and get the biggest deduction that you can possibly get. Work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.